Hello, I'm Erica Nisborski, your host for Behind the Lens. On our program, we talk with noted photographers about their work. And today, I'm very pleased to have as my guest, Caitlin Genso. Welcome to Behind the Lens.
Thanks for having me.
Caitlin Genso creates photography that portrays carefully constructed moments in time that pertain to private life entering the public sphere. She was born and raised in rural southern Maryland and now resides in the Washington, D.C. area. Her rustic past has influenced how she interacts with and documents the broader community. Her work has been exhibited at the Goethe Cultural Institute, as well as Gallery 31 and White Walls at the Corcoran College of Art and Design. She has received the Overall Achievement in Art Award from the College of Southern Maryland and has had her photographs published in the University of New Mexico Press's Best Student Essays. She is currently completing her BFA at the Corcoran College of Art and Design. Tell us, how did you decide to become a photographer?
I feel like I never truly decided to become one. It just kind of happened. My dad had been a photographer as a hobbyist in the past, and we had cameras around the house, and my parents encouraged me to try it. Like, I'm the youngest of four, and everyone in my family is artistic, so photography kind of became the medium I was most comfortable with. And also, it was different than what my siblings were doing.
Whose work do you admire?
I admire the work of Sally Mann and Doug Dubois, and I feel like their work, I probably identify with it the most because they deal with shooting their family a lot, which is what I've really become interested in. I also really enjoy the work of Francesca Woodman, and I think her search for identity and her self-portraiture is really beautiful and well thought out. And I also really like the work of Rinko Kowachi in Japan. She's a pretty brilliant photographer and can take anything and make a gorgeous photo out of it. And her way of mix matching things and like putting things together you would never think of is really inspiring to me. And I also really like the work of two of the Corcoran teachers I've had, which is Terry Weifenbach and Muriel Hasbin. Just think they're both really creative and inventive in what they choose to photograph.
What do you think makes your work distinctive?
I think my work is distinctive in the fact that I try to portray these little moments is really what I've started to go for more than anything else. And I feel like I've just developed a distinctive viewpoint in a way because a lot of it is put to the side, nothing in the middle, a softer focus, and I just think it's the emotive quality that makes it different.
Please take us through some of the photos you brought with you today.
So the photos I brought with me today are things I've taken within the last year. I decided not to bring in any of my old work, like my black and white work, because I feel like I've departed from that quite a bit. And so some of the first work I would want to show is, it's of my family, of my mother and father specifically, and they live in Lexington Park on a house on the Chesapeake Bay. And it's a house I grew up in, and I feel very comfortable photographing them. And this series was actually called Through My Fingers because I kind of felt like it was time slipping through my fingers as well as like a kid like peeking through their fingers, because a lot of the shots you can't see their faces or really selective focus, so a lot of it's blurry. And I have one of my mother sitting on the porch, and it's like a low angle looking up our cement blocks that we have that you walk on, and I was really just trying to capture her in kind of a more natural state. And she has these wonderful long legs, and she's always in shorts, and it's just a really comfortable setting. And I tried to catch my parents in these moments, but they were still constructed. Because on a lot of these I'd say, okay, well, the light's really nice right now, come sit on the porch. Or stop what you're doing right there, let me get a photo of you. So they weren't purely spontaneous, but it was kind of me working on having more spontaneous shooting. So the shot of my father's hair in the sunlight, that was them. I just asked him to sit on the porch for a while, and he got busy shooing flies or whatever he was doing, and that's how that one came about.
Do you feel like a lot of your images in this series come from memories that you have?
Yes and no. I feel like I draw upon memories, and then I try to create them with who I am now, because you can never quite capture what it was like as a kid, but I'm trying to recreate those types of feelings.
I noticed you have several different formats in your work. Are you using different mediums?
Yes, the majority of the work is done on color film. A few shots that I've done that I've brought in are digital, and I did those all in Mexico. That was all a digital project for me. But mostly I shoot film, and I'm either using a 120 millimeter Yashica 635, that was my dad's, and had been in the attic for 20 years, so it's a nice old camera, and I love that it was my dad's and it has a nice connection. And then I shoot with a Canon 30D, which is a bit behind the curve for digital, but I like it. And my 35 millimeter I recently got, which is the film equivalent of my digital.
Nice. And I know that in some of the older medium format cameras, there's no built-in light meter. The one you have, does it have a light meter?
No.
No. Are you guessing, or are you?
I use a handheld meter. Meter. I have an old Weston one my dad gave me with the dial on it. So
nice. Appropriate to era.
Yeah, exactly.
In your Mexico work, tell us a little bit about that. What you were doing there, and how this project came about.
I was lucky enough to receive a grant from the Corcoran it was a scholarship to take a class they had over the summer for 2 weeks to spend in Mexico, where we went to San Miguel and also Mexico City. And the whole idea was trying to portray a different culture, but also be true to yourself. And I decided that it was time for a totally different shooting style. It was way out of my comfort zone, so I went with digital, and I decided just to shoot really spontaneously and reflexively instead of planning shots out. So some of the photos I brought in are in different locations we went. I have one of an energy saver light bulb hanging up in a church, in a really old church with frescoes on the wall. And so I went to all these places, and instead of photographing the grandness of the church, I just focused in on these little quirky things that I found interesting. Same thing with the rug that's on the floor. That was at what do you call it? Not a nunnery, but the appropriate way to say. Yes, it was at a convent. And I just found it really beautiful, and how it was folded and how it had been walked on so many times. And same with the ribbon on the street that I saw. It was remnants of something festive, and great that it happened.
Now, in your Mexico work, it's all digital. Can you tell me how you feel differently shooting digital from how you feel when you're shooting film?
Whenever I shoot digitally, I feel like I'm doing snapshots, or it's more of a throwaway, and I'm trying to get out of that mindset. But it's really freeing to do digital in a way too, because you're not paying per frame so much as you are with film. And so I felt much more comfortable being spontaneous and just shooting anything and everything. And I was shooting a full 8 gigabyte card every single day, and it was a great experience.
And how do you find editing your digital work? Since you are shooting so much more, there's a lot more photographs to choose from.
I also love the delete button. I've become a big fan of that. I don't save each and every shot. If I know it's just a shot I'm never going to use, I don't save it in the archive. I get rid of it. And yeah, editing, I find it takes a lot longer. And I really like having a printout to mark on. I think I'm just a hands-on, tactile person. And so I try to do a lot of the editing and bridge and getting rid of files and highlighting the ones I want. But I think it takes me a lot longer.
Yeah.
But it's really great to have so many options, because I feel like there are many bodies of work within what you've shot.
And you've mentioned your gear that you're using. Have you noticed any color differences within your work, that you're spending a lot more time editing, post-production, to try and get the colors to match up between the digital and the film? Or
I would say, if I'm scanning in film and trying to fix it, it's really hard for me to get it to where my print was. But otherwise, I try not to really I don't try to think about digital in terms of film when I'm working on it, because It's just never going to be quite the same.
Have you exhibited both of the mediums together?
No, I've never done that. I hear that's kind of faux pas, so I haven't tried it yet, but I'm interested in trying it.
Nice. And when you do print, what size are your prints?
The digital work I've done primarily 13 by 19. I've done some smaller depending on the work and kind of what it calls for, but I'm now working pretty much only in color film and color prints, and I'm doing about 16 by 20 inch prints.
Okay. Are there any particular images that you'd like to talk about?
I'd say some of my more recent stuff that I've been working on, it once again is talking about my home and where I'm from, and there are a lot of shots of my parents. And I think one of my favorite shots I've taken is of my mother swimming, and I caught her in mid-conversation. So she has this really interesting look on her face, and I feel like it's totally candid, and there's nothing posed about it. And I just feel like it's so authentic because you can like see she has this very emotive quality to her, and I feel like you can see like who she is on the inside in it. And then she just looks really gorgeous in it too. And I love to have that document of my mother, and I think it really speaks to the place. And I also feel like that about the portrait of my dad on the dock, and he has a very old man of the sea kind of look to him with the long beard and like the wispy hair. And once again, I feel like it really captured him, even though it's more of a quote unquote stereotypical portrait. I feel like it actually captured who he was. So those speak very strongly to me.
I noticed in the framing that you tend to pick to the side. You're not necessarily framing to the middle. You're letting the viewer, go down this path through the image, and you get to discover a lot as you're looking at the photograph. Things don't pop out at you right at first. It kind of takes time. How do you usually set these up? Do you pick several different angles before you set up your shot, or do they just happen?
Usually I feel like my first and last shot are off to the side, and then I try other angles, and I still tend to edit towards doing the ones to the side because I feel like it has, like you said, I really like that you said you have to kind of go through it and search in a way to discover. And I also like the idea of like cutting off parts of things and obstructing because it just makes me want to look more.
Right. And about how many images do you take of one scene that you've set up to pick one?
If I've set it up, I tend to take a lot more than if I haven't set it up. And I would say I could do, like in terms of rolls of film, I could do like a quarter of a roll on each shot. Because generally I'll be really excited about it, and when the excitement starts to go away, I'm like, okay, it's time to move on. So I could do like 10 shots on a particular scene, depending on what it is.
As we move on to the image you have here of the window with a reflection of the yard and a silhouette of your mother, what were you thinking when you were constructing this image?
In that image, I was actually outside washing windows, and I saw my mom working inside dusting, and I just thought about how interesting it was that there was a reflection of the yard as well as like this look into the interior. And as you said, how she's silhouetted, like it became, I just feel like the comparison between in and out became really obvious. And then also to tie it into a person, it felt like it was a question between inside and outside of a person. And then how her head is, like her face is concealed. It felt like a memory to me, like where you can look back in your head and you think about something happening, but everything's a little fuzzy. And so it felt like a memory of my mother doing this because it's a very common act for her to be doing.
You seem to have